So, okay, so we're recording. We want to welcome everyone to the virtual home fair or home. Yeah, I guess it's a home fair. This is the electrical question and answer portion of it. Um, my name is Tim Bennett. My co-host is Jeff Goy, both electrical inspectors for the city of Seattle. Um, both journeyman electrician inspectors come from a variety of experience in the field. We're here to answer any questions related to homeowners, permitting. If you have a question, those of you that are there, if you would try to use a raise your hand function, Jeff's going to monitor that and we will take your questions one at a time. We're going to try to answer your questions. We have some documents that we can show you to hopefully help us answer those questions. Again, we're recording this for documentation for our purposes or our training and whatnot, but also for follow-up questions. So if we don't answer your question, we will be able to go back and reach out to you. So feel free to use your chat box. Welcome, Catherine. Welcome the other. It's on my screen says owner, so don't have all the names, but feel free. If you don't have a raise your hand button, please unmute your mic and speak up your question, and feel free to ask as many whatever questions you have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up for any questions. And as we go through, I will say that Jeff's done a really good job of having information to be able to help show you our system through the computer. So feel free. We will ask that you leave your cameras off just to help with the bandwidth of the meeting. So if you can turn your cameras off, and then we'll go from there. Welcome, Marivelle. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Okay, well, this is Richard. So my son and daughter bought a house together that they're living in. It's a 1945 era house with knob and tube. So I guess we're eventually going to get some bids on getting the wiring redone. It does have a panel that was probably updated maybe in the 80s. So it's got a good electrical panel with breakers. But for redoing the wiring, so I've done brand new construction where you're stapling wires and whatnot. But when you're redoing an old knob and tube, do you not staple the wires before you bring them into your boxes and that type of thing?
That is correct, Richard. Luckily, I spent most of my career rewiring knob and tube houses, so this is something that's very up my alley. Normally, what would happen? There's several different ways of doing knob and tube rewires. When you're doing a knob and tube rewire where you're not opening the walls and you're simply fishing wires in, our codes allow you to not have to staple those in the walls. Anywhere you open the walls, then you would have to meet the local codes of stapling within 12 inches of a box every 4.5 feet. But anywhere that the walls are not destroyed or not opened up, you can just fish in down the walls from the attic, from the basement, and not support those wires. That is correct.
So any opening, like a 4x4 opening in the wall, whatnot, like to make a curve from the top plate down into the wall, I would make an opening there in some situations. So that would have to. Is that
would require stapling?
No staples. Okay, thank you.
The only time you would have to staple is if you open, and some contractors will do that, and Some contractors will do that. They will go in and they will open up the bottom 2 feet of a wall, okay, and run all their wires new. And in a case like that, and they would do that all the way around the room or a portion around the room. If you can staple it, it's always a good idea to staple it. If you're using those holes, a lot of guys will use a 4-inch round hole because it's easy to cut with a hole saw to do all their fishing. We do not require them to get a staple in that area.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. I see we've had a couple other people. Darren, welcome. Feel free to go ahead and ask your questions. You will have to unmute your mic. We have you all muted as you come in. Jeff, can you hear me? Oh.
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Anyone else have any questions, permitting questions? Any other electrical related questions?
I have a question. This is Maribel.
Hi, Maribel.
Hello. Well, I'm a designer. I'm a drafter for years. So I do a lot of plans for home remodel. And there's a lot of houses that the rooms don't have outlets, within 2 feet of opening, within 12 feet, et cetera. They only have it on one side of the wall. Mm-hmm. How do you determine if you want to try to fur out the other walls to install outlets, or does the code allow you just minimal outlets?
So the code will allow you to, in an existing house that has not, very much like the knob and tube rewires, in an older house, when those codes were written, they didn't require outlets every 6 feet. If you're rewiring a house and you're simply replacing the existing with new, you're not required to bring it to today's code. If you open the walls, however, then you have to, any open walls, if you cut your drywall off at 3 feet or 4 feet or whatever and open those walls, then you're required to bring it up to the local codes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good.
Alrighty.
Thank you. As soon as I finish my coffee, I'll probably have more questions.
Okay. Fair enough. Anybody else?
Boy, well, I feel like I could dominate the meeting, but so do you have any, can I make an open-ended question? Are there any issues I should be aware of when working on a house that's like 1945 vintage? Any kind of a heads up, look out for this, or?
That's a really tough one because and as I said before, I spent the better part of 30 years rewiring these old houses, in most of them in Seattle. The biggest thing to look for is, and I don't think your house is old enough from what you're telling me, is a lot of these older turn of the century houses still have gas piping for when they had the old gas lamps. And you want to be very careful because some of those are actually still tied to the gas systems.
Huh.
They're capped off and they're buried and usually under a light. I've seen them that have been active gas powered. No one ever took them off the system. A lot of the Capitol Hill houses still have that. So that's one thing you have to look at. Welcome, Jatinder. And so there's a lot of things you have to mainly on that. You have to be really careful especially if it's a lath and plaster house. I have had situations where you'll go to cut a hole and the whole wall falls apart because the plaster is so um, was inferiorly done back in 19 whenever. So I have seen it where you cut a hole and the whole thing falls down. So,
Oh, wow.
you just got some things like that. You've got to be aware of blocking and different. It's really hard to say exactly, what to be cautious of because every house is built differently.
Oh, okay.
So,
Hey, Richard, the other thing, this is Jeff Goit. The other thing to be careful of too in older homes that we see a lot of is electrical panels in kitchens. When you remodel, you got to be careful about that because there's very few places a electrical panel is allowed in a kitchen.
Okay, thank you. Huh.
the biggest thing on that in the kitchens is making sure that it has the appropriate working space. There's not a what's a code there's no code that says it can't be in a kitchen, but you can't put it over a countertop. You have to have working space in front of it. So a lot of people will put them in a galley style kitchen in the space between. There's a lot of things code wise. You have to be careful and not, you got to make sure that you're following. You may think you're following one code, and then you find, wait, and later on, somebody put a cabinet in there. I just had to inspect one of these yesterday. So you want to make sure that you make all the codes and talk to your inspectors when they're out there. They are very good resources. Every one of us have a phone. You can call and find out who your local district inspector is. And my supervisor's on the phone, so you can, if need be, call him, and we can all answer those questions. So, we are here to try to help you guys succeed before we find a problem. So,
Okay. Well, yeah, that's this is all great information because I've also looked at other homes too. So let me ask one more question. Is it possible to, I'm thinking of how they bond plumbing pipes and galvanized pipes I've seen under homes and stuff where it's bonded so much. And I'm thinking of one place that had a lot of pinhole leaks in a galvanized pipe plumbing system. And I guess my question is, can you overground a system? Could that have been creating electrolysis?
I don't believe that necessarily is the reason for the pinholes. I can't say for sure that it's not, but that is a very good reason why. We've had several years ago, we had a code change where your main grounding electrode has to be done within 5 feet of where your cold water pipe comes in the building.
Huh.
And that the biggest part of that change is because two reasons. One, there's so much plastic pipe out there now, and people are doing repairs, people are doing adding on, and so what happens is your grounding electrode conductor that goes to your cold water pipe, all of a sudden for years, and I've wired them myself, would go to the hot water tank. Well, then somebody comes in and cuts out half of the plumbing, and all of a sudden you have no grounding electrode conductor. So several years ago, they changed the code to where you have to run it to within 5 feet of the main water supply coming in, the main metal pipe coming in. And
Okay.
there's a lot of new grounding codes over the last 5 or 6 years that the other part of that, Richard, is I've seen where they use that water pipe as a neutral conductor, which has never been illegal, but it happens. And that is potentially could cause some of that pinhole stuff. Could be defective pipe as well. So a lot of different reasons, a lot of different things that could cause the pinhole stuff.
Well, and you said they used the neutral was
Well, they'll use the equipment ground, and then they'll use the pipe as a conductor, and they've changed the code to where you can no longer use that pipe as a grounding electrode conductor. So because of that happening, usually it happened in the really old houses where they didn't have ground rods and it was faulty wiring. And I've had cases where I've cut through a water pipe and all of a sudden half the house goes out because
oh wow.
somebody tied onto a water pipe and it lost the neutral. And that's never a good thing.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So anyone else have questions? Welcome Tim and Jatinder and I saw Nathan on there. Maribel, Ming, welcome.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you mind telling folks out there, the general requirements for, DADUs and AADUs and some of the smaller electrical projects, kind of permit requirement or plans review requirement, and how SCL, provide them services once we approve, and some other general requirements like metering and things like that. I think that would be a good information for many of the people out there who may be trying to listen in and try to see, what those requirements are.
Okay, we can do that. And for those of you on the phone, Jatinder is our director, one of our directors. So what he's talking about is there's right in the city now, there's a big push with affordable housing, and there's a lot of accessory dwelling units, a lot of detached accessory dwelling units. There's a variety of different ways to build these units on your property. In some houses, I mean, you have to start with going through the process of, is my lot zoned in a way that I can do this. We're seeing a lot of them. A lot of our I just lost it. A lot of our ADUs, some of which are being fed from the existing homes and simply fed by a feeder, and there's code requirements that will allow that. There's also requirements from City Light, as Jatinder was saying. City Light, if you plan to build an ADU, you need to reach out to Seattle City Light because depending on where your service is being fed, you may have to change your main service to your house in order to have a separate, if you're going to have a separate meter on your detached dwelling unit. I can answer specific questions if someone asks the specific question. There's a lot involved in it. So to try to think off the top of my head exactly what's required is and all of the different I can think of tons of different questions that could be asked. But in a case where your house is being fed from an alley, most cases Seattle City Light's going to require you to put to relocate your meter. They can't run their service strikes above other buildings without meeting certain height requirements and things of that nature. So If anybody's got any specific questions on that, I'd be glad to do my best to try to answer those.
So, Tim, let me pick your mind, or maybe you or Jeff. I think Jeff is also there helping you out, Jeff Goit.
Yep.
I think it might be worthwhile to, share with our stakeholders out there in the community about our efforts as virtual inspections, within electrical. And electrical has been the kind of spearheading force within inspections to kind of go with the virtual inspections, needs when pandemic hit back in March 2020, and just kind of tell them in general what we have done and how it has really helped us and our, customers out there. Just give them a general, what we have done.
Okay. Virtual inspections. I remember my very first COVID experience. We were not sure how we were going to do inspections, and through a lot of trial and error starting in March, we decided that we would try to do virtual inspections. That being said, how do we make virtual inspections work when we've never done it before? So myself, and several other inspectors got together and started looking at different ways. How can we make this work? And in today's modern times with Facebook and Google Duo, and we don't use Zoom, we mainly use FaceTime and Google Duo. We have pretty well, I'm going to say, almost perfected the virtual inspection, where we actually call and do inspections with video. And in most cases, it works really well. Our biggest detriment in virtual inspections is self-service. I am a clear believer, as I always thought Seattle should have perfect self-service. That is not the case. But virtual inspections, it has allowed us twofold. It's allowed us as inspectors to still be able to continue to keep up on inspections. The electricians, the homeowners, the construction work could still maintain, and we could stay on top of all of our inspections. Right now, our department, in the electrical department, I believe we have 22 or 23 inspectors throughout the city, and about at least half of us are working full-time from home on virtual inspections. What a virtual inspection has allowed is, I believe it's cut time on travel time. It's also allowed me to be more flexible, and our other inspectors to be more flexible with contractors' time. I can schedule an inspection to be done at a specific time throughout my day, and so it's not a perfect system, but it's been a really good tool. Where it will go in the future, we're still looking at that. I can't say for sure. I'm sure that Jatinder and some of the supervision and will look at that in the future, and the inspectors, to see some of the benefits to it are, especially really quick, simple inspections are very easy to do. A lot of them homeowners can do, so it's given us a lot of variety in how we do our inspections. We don't have to have somebody sit home for 2 hours with our normal procedure was to give you a 2-hour window. By being able to do virtual inspections, I believe we've dropped that down to almost a pinpoint, or at least a half-hour time frame. I plan my day every day. Every inspection, I have a half-hour time slot, and then if somebody's running behind or whatever, I have some flexibility to slide that around. So We are, as I said, right now trying to meet the governor's guidelines and do as many virtual inspections as possible. Some places just don't have the self-service. Some things are a little more technical that do require an on-site inspector, and we do have those people that are out working in the field as well. But our goal is to do as many virtual inspections as possible. Any other questions?
Tim, just want to let everyone know that Jeff Goit, one of our team members in electrical, has put in a very useful information in the conversation. Please check those. He has given some tip numbers and some other links which are really very useful. So I encourage everyone in the community to seek out that information, and that will be a very useful information. One more thing, Tim. I was just wondering what has been the usual lag time once our inspector approves a service inspection like a 200 amp, 400 amp, or even smaller than that, like 60 amps, 100, 150. There are a variety of, service inspection approvals that we do. Is there any lag time from SCL point of view to get them hot? Because that could be one of the things that contractors and homeowners may be waiting on some of those things. So just give them a little bit of insight. What are the present lag times, if there are any, or how we can facilitate, or what kind of role we play in trying to facilitate that kind of moving the thing forward?
Well, at this point, as far as the lag times, because that goes through Seattle City Light, I don't have any. I unfortunately can't tell you what the lag time is because they have their own schedules. What I would say is, as soon as we sign off a service, I would recommend that people get on that list as soon as possible. Seattle City Light is backed up, and but the exact lag time, Jatinder, I have no way to. Unfortunately, I because that being a separate department is.
Yeah, that's fine. If we don't know, we don't know. But I think that may be one of the information that folks will appreciate. And I know Tim or Rich and the other supervisors and other inspectors sometimes get involved with those kind of inquiries. So I was just wondering if we could probably at least maybe Jeff, if you could probably find out some link from SCL or some contact information or email that people could inquire, that would be really a great help to folks out there. One more thing, Tim, is there anybody from the plans review and electrical plans review, or anybody want to give folks information on our plan reviews activity in electrical?
We don't have anybody in this meeting from plan review. If anyone has any questions, I will do the best I can, or take their numbers and pass that information and have someone. I'll answer what I can, and then I'll have someone from plan review pick that up. And that's part of the reason we record this, so we have a record that we can go back and make sure that we don't lose anyone.
Hey, I thought Tim was there also in the conversation. Tim or Jeff, if they would like to add any, words of wise or some thoughts into this conversation, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, this is Tim Rasmussen. I'm one of the supervisors. And let's see, with the Seattle City Light, yeah, we really don't have a lot of feedback. We just, as soon as you get a service approval, we do want you to contact your service rep. And I will put a link up there. I'm looking for it right now, so you guys can contact them by address. And then as to the plan review, it doesn't really, plan review doesn't affect homeowners too much because our requirements for plan review are multifamily over single family or duplex. So all single family and duplex would be an over-the-counter permit.
Correct. Are there any questions out there from the outside the customers?
Well, I have a question. This
All
is
right.
Annabelle. First of all, I'm having problems with my camera. Well, in an old house, like I do drafting, so I don't specialize in one thing. How do you know if an old house is grounded or has a rod? Is that, can the city help, or just to make sure, can we install a rebar, an existing UFR? I mean, installing new UFR for an old house. Because sometimes I come across houses and they have lamps outside, exterior lamps, and each one of them has like a 8-foot long copper 8-gauge wire, and it's like on a little metal stake grounded into the, like if someone tried to Mickey Mouse or ground each new light fixture they attached. But this is an old house, so that's kind of worrisome, because and then it says, well, there's probably no grounding at all in that house.
Well, so the ease are, well, there's several different ways, I think. And Tim or Jeff, feel free to spin and help me out here. The first thing I would look at is in your panel to see if there is any bare copper wire going to a water pipe, first off. Because most of your older houses had have metal water pipe going to the street, and that is a grounding electrode in itself. Um, that is your main grounding electrode. So if you have that, then your panel is ultimately grounded to earth. Now also your neutral bar in your meter is attached to, it is basically your panel is grounded back to your neutral bar, as well in almost every meter. It's supposed to be. Um, as far as the ground rods on the light poles, not real sure why they did that. Probably not necessary, other than if it's so old that it was they before they had grounded um, conductors with grounds in them. That may have been something that they put in just to run the light fixture to the earth. I can't answer to that, but the easiest way is if you start seeing bare copper wires, and excuse me, some of the older houses had a copper wire with a metal like wrap around it, attached to the water pipe. Then at least you have a grounding electrode conductor going to a ground rod or going to a grounding electrode system, which is your metal water pipe under the ground.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, it does. Because I
Okay.
live in an old house I rent, and it ruins my weed whacker to hit those copper lines on the edges of the house.
Yeah.
And if you could just remind me again on new construction, what are the options to run a UFR, a grounding system, when you're pouring new foundation and
Okay. If you're pouring a new foundation, we have requirements that you put a UFR ground, which is a rebar, at least 20, a minimum of 20 feet of rebar in the lower portion of the footing, and that will attach to your ground. That will be your grounding electrode system. Most of the new houses have copper or have plastic water pipes now. So we require a UFR on any new construction where any new footings that are longer than 20 feet, if they're doing work to the service, we require a UFR ground to be put in the footing.
Oh, okay.
If you're doing a big addition onto the back of a new house and you're gonna pour, 500 square feet of addition, so you have 40 feet or 50 feet of footing, and you're going to put a new service in the house, we would require you to put a UFA ground in the footing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hey, Tim Rasmussen, I just have one question. If there is a customer out there in the city of Seattle and they want to refer the present applicable NEC code, so do we provide that? I'm not sure. I think for internal thing, we have a tools and resources section, but is that thing available for anybody out there in the community? Or what you can tell if someone wants to refer a NEC code section. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of tips that guides them for specific areas, but wasn't sure if we had a overall like a NEC code reference, whichever edition is applicable at this time or where we will be going on March 15th, what code edition, if you could just tell the group.
Yes, it's I'm going to put the link to our SDCI inspections page, and when you click on electrical inspections, you can scroll down and you'll find current codes, and I think there is a link to past codes. And right now we're on the 2017 NEC, which we do provide a link to that, but we have our Seattle electrical code supplement, which is just our Seattle only codes that apply to the NEC. We take the NEC and we change it and add our language to it. And then on March 15th, we will be going to the 2020 code. So that link will be there for the new code also. And I will provide that in the chat. Oh, look at
I
that.
believe also Jeff is posting
Yep.
that on for people to see on the shared
Screen. Very good. Yep, that's it.
So I'm gonna go back. I'm trying to go through some of the chat to make sure we got all of our questions answered. Ming, did you? I see you have a question that says, you're planning an ADU and relocating the electric meter. Did Jeff get that? Whoa. Did your question get answered there? Ming, are you still in the meeting? You can unmute your mic if you.
I see she's typing back to Jeff, I think.
Okay.
Hey, Tim, I also saw that she probably asked one word thing like metering. Maybe if we want to tell general about metering, I think I saw something in chat from Ming about metering.
Yes, that's actually was an attachment that Jeff put on for the link to contact the SEL reps. Anytime is highly recommended, and it's in our code that anytime you do service related things with your meter, that you need to contact SCL. We, as the electrical inspections department, we do not make determinations of where your meters can go. We have electrical codes that we will inspect it to meet current electrical codes, but we've had situations where people did not check with SCL, and that link is in the chat box to find out who your SCL rep is. But you need to always make sure you check with SCL before you start your project, because we have had people do meters, we inspect them, everything looks good, and then Seattle City Light says, "Sorry, we're not gonna put these in." So, yeah, Jeff just put up a map with Seattle City Lights service areas. So So make sure you contact SCL before you do any service work, because they have the final say whether they make the connection on the at the top of the pole or not. So it's very important to make sure you contact SCL.
And just to hi everybody, this is Jeff Goit. Just to let everybody know out there, I'm kind of answering all questions, sharing links, sharing the screen on a lot of valuable information you as the customer and the contractor may need and want. So I'm kind of here in the background answering the chat box, and as discussions go on, provide this information as Tim answers your questions.
We're tag teaming this.
Hey, Jeff, can you show them how if you click on the residential customers, you put your address in and it'll pull up your service rep?
You bet. So let's think of an address here.
Oh, 1819 Holden Street.
And if you did, you'll see over to the right-hand side for everybody that's kind of following along. Your supervisor is Tracy Kamei, and it has her listed phone number, her email, and it gives the district number as well.
Oh yeah, that box was in them. There you go. Perfect.
Yep. And then your ESR, your electric service rep, is Jason Collette, with their phone number and email address.
And those are also this Jason Collette. Well, Jason is for this particular district, but these electrical service reps, they can answer your questions on, as Jatinder was saying earlier, on lead time, letting you know. They should be able to let you know how much lead time it's going to be once your service is approved till they get it connected permanently. Do we have any other questions out there concerning services or any other electrical? If you have an electrical question, feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand, or if you don't have the hand raise option, unmute your mic and speak out, and we'll do what we can to answer those questions.
One thing, Tim Rasmussen, if you are there, could you say a few things about any energy conservation changes coming in this new cycle, or any new electrical products that may be used within a given residential household or anything like that? Any information that deals with some innovation in electrical, or any changes that people would want to anticipate, just in general, if you had any piece of information there. Tim Rasmussen.
Well, let's see. I wasn't quite prepared. I was just watching, but some of the big I don't know, what are some of the big code changes? I'm trying to think of those.
I think the biggest code changes are going to be our electric vehicle requirements that are passed the city council. Jeff has put up some legislation sharing on required electric vehicle charging.
That's a very good one to bring up, Tim.
Yeah.
Any new buildings after June 7th, 2019 will be required to put in a 40 amp GFCI circuit to the parking spot. And that's if it's deemed if they put that information on your building permit, then it will be a requirement that electrical will look for, and so will the building inspector at the end of your project.
Some of the other code changes residential that I can think of are also GFI requirements. However, the state has on 240-volt systems, the state has waxed a little bit or put a little bit of a delay in GFI protection for, I believe it's 30 amps and above, but any of your heat pumps and things like that now, once our new code goes into effect in March 15th, I believe is the date. There are a lot of GFI requirements that are new. So if you're a contractor or you're a homeowner doing your own work, that's going to affect a lot. That's going to affect a lot of things, and you'll start seeing more requirements for GFI protection. Laundry rooms, dryers. Although the dryers and ranges have been postponed, I think until 2022. There's a lot of changes in the 2020 code around GFI protection. A big one now is the disposal receptacle that has gone in the last 3 code cycles back and forth, and now it's back again. So from now on, it will be required to be GFI protected. So just a lot of changes mainly in the GFI protection realm of equipment.
So Tim, I have a question related. So can you tell me what's not required to be GFI?
What's not required?
Yeah, certain.
Yeah.
Or another question, are you seeing a lot of panels that all are GFI breakers? I don't know what's better.
Maryville, can you repeat the question about the panels?
Yeah, are you seeing more? Is it better to install all breakers GFI?
We're seeing a lot more of people putting the breakers in because you have GFI requirements. You also have arc fault requirements. And so a lot of people are just what they call a dual function breaker. A lot of the builders and the electricians are going strictly with dual function breakers because of the cost, and there's a lot of variables there. Nothing wrong with that. Me personally, I prefer that, but unless the code requires it, it's totally acceptable to do arc fault and use devices. So that's kind of one of those preference things. You have to meet the GFI requirements, but we don't necessarily tell you where to put those GFIs in, whether it's the panel or the individual bathrooms or and any specific places. Like a big change this year is the dishwasher. For many years, you used to be able to hardwire your dishwasher and GFI protect it elsewhere, panel or otherwise. And they have changed. That's one of the changes this year, that it now will require a plug-in in an adjacent cabinet. So you can, there's not unless there's something that I haven't seen yet, an allowance to hardwire it anymore.
So the same with garbage disposal? You mentioned something.
Garbage disposals, I think it was 2011, or I believe it was 2011, they came out and said all of your garbage disposals had to be GFI protected. And then 3 years later, they took that out, and then now they've put it back in. So, like I said, there's a lot of GFI changes. So be very aware of your codes. And one thing I've found for those homeowners out there that are curious about a code is Google. There is a lot of, and I find myself, if I need a quick reference, because as an inspector, we look at codes a lot, um, to one, to write them, two, to make sure we're on the right page. A lot of times I will Google the code or Google my question to see what code it is, then go look at my code book and find it, or if there's something we're not sure of. And there will be, it's called Mike Holtz. There's a lot of reference material that comes up on Google. Don't believe everything you hear on the internet, but it will at least give you a close code reference if you have those questions, and then you can go in and look at the current codes, because most of them are, last year or beyond. So it gives you a good idea. That's a good place to start looking. I wouldn't stop looking there, but that at least will give you a good place to start looking if you have a code question.
Yeah, because I have all the code books, but
Right.
It's easier to see where the section or the code begins.
Correct.
What was that website you mentioned?
Just Google and type your question into Google.
But the website she was talking about is Mike Holt.
Oh, Mike. Yeah,
Holt.
and that's just one that I happen to know is there. There's several of them, different commentaries on the code, but there's a ton of information on Google with that if you have a code question, or that's a good place to start.
I'd like to add, Maribel, Tim touched on this. When you do go to the Mike Holt webpage, be very careful of when the question was asked, because very often the question might have been asked 9 years ago, like in 2011. And obviously codes have changed since then, but just a heads up when you do use sites like that.
Yep, it's true. Don't stop at what the first thing you see on the website, please. But go look at look up the current code, but that'll give you somewhere to start. And even as an inspector, I will tell you, and I think Tim's still on the line. We look up codes all the time, and when we're in the middle of an inspection and we need to find a code, that's the worst time to try to look something up, because you can never remember. It's there because we've been doing this for 30 some odd years, and I can tell you from my experience how many times I've called Tim or one of the other supervisors to say, where is that code at? So for us doing it every day, it's still hard. So for you guys as homeowners or electricians or contractors, we want you to have as much information as you can. And so, like I said, I tell my customers all the time, feel free to call me if you need help. I'd rather help you now than see you have to replace something later.
Hey, Tim.
Yes, sir.
I also, one thing to point to is that the code cycle changes every 3 years. So that's another
correct.
challenge. But I did add in the chat that we do offer technical support for homeowners who are doing their own work. And I put the phone number, the 206-684-5383. We do back that phone every day, and we will answer code questions. It's not a how to do things, but it is if you are taking it on yourself and you have specific code questions, we have somebody there that can clarify that for you.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody else have any other questions or code questions that we can try to answer, or questions in general?
Hi, it's Richard again.
Hi, Richard.
So on my son and daughter's house, they have an electric water heater. I don't remember the specifications. It's not a huge thing. It's a 40-gallon, whatever. I don't know how many amps, whatnot, but it doesn't have any kind of a GFI protection, correct?
Give me just a minute. I'm going to look in the new code and see. I don't specifically remember hot water heater, but give me just a minute and I will get back to you.
Okay, because I just think
Okay.
GFI is always around a source of water.
Right, but that's not always
Correct.
the only reason.
Okay.
And like I said, there are a lot of changes on GFI protection. So you can look. Do you have a code book? Access to a code book?
No, I don't.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll tell you the code reference is in the NEC is 210.8.
210.8.
And you can Google NEC 210.8 2020 code, and I'm sure that it would probably come up somewhere in there. Or if you go, you can go to the library, and they have code books at the library. It's a little expensive, but if you're doing a lot of home repair stuff, I would highly recommend. I mean, the code books are a little bit expensive, but to get a code book, it's even, they do. The one thing to keep in mind is they do rewrite them every 3 years. We get a new code book, and there's always changes. But there's a lot of websites that are out there where you can keep up with some of those things as well. So, but
Okay, good. Thank you. Hey, so another question completely out of ignorance is, so their house again had knob and tube, and I went through and I replaced all their outlets with GFI. I mean, outlets in the living room, bedroom. Was that sensible, or was that a waste of money?
well, they all have 2-wire circuits.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only code compliant, I was thinking of the correct word. The only code compliant way to change a 2-wire circuit or a 2-wire outlet and be code compliant is to do it with a GFI protected outlet. Okay, whether it's putting GFIs in every single outlet or knob and tube is hard to. You can't put one GFI here and it will cover a whole series of outlets because knob and tube in those days kind of went everywhere.
Yes.
And as a knob and tube rewire person, anytime I rewired a house, I would always go to the farthest side of the house to find out what's not working when I turned a circuit off, because inevitably you turn a circuit off on the south side of the house, there's going to have one outlet that they're going to put on the complete opposite end of the house. So I would say, yes, that is a code compliant way to change all of your outlets to a 3-pronged outlet is with the GFI protection at each outlet.
And labeling it non-grounded.
And labeling it non-grounded is also, well, if you're GFI protecting, Tim, are you still out there? Tim may have went away, or Jeff. Labeling it non-grounded, you have to label it as GFI protected. But if you have a device in every single outlet, it is GFI protected. And I still think you have to put the little sticker on it that comes with the GFIs.
Yes, you do. This is just for informational note. I wish this is where I had the electronic PDF version of the code, so I could copy and paste in a meeting like this. But the code article you're looking for is in the NEC is 406.4. D 4D 4D. 406.4D.
That's correct.
And like you were saying, Tim, yes, when you replace a two-prong receptacle with a grounding type receptacle, a three-prong receptacle, you have to GFCI protect them, and you have to have the sticker on the receptacle that states there is no equipment ground.
Right.
Okay.
So I would say, Richard, you did well by changing them to GFI outlets.
But what do you lose though when it's not grounded? I mean, it's not doing its full job, right?
What it's doing is, if there's a fault, that receptacle will trip. It will kick out. It still does not have a ground, but it will. If there's a fault, it will still turn off.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
The easier way to understand that, Richard, that I tell lots of my customers is I use the garden hose analogy. If you turn on the garden hose and you got X amount of water coming out of the hose, then that same amount better be coming back into the pool or the container. That's how a GFCI receptacle works. It works off the imbalance of the current going through the device. So once there's an imbalance, GFCI receptacles are set at 25 milliamps. Once there's an imbalance of 25 milliamps from the power going out to the power coming back in to the panel, that device trips.
Okay, that makes sense. What I guess so by not being grounded though, it just means the appliance itself isn't grounded.
That is correct, and that's not the best scenario to have. But the solution to it is the GFCI protection.
GFCI. GFCI. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jeff Goit, that was exceptional explanation. I do really appreciate going a little bit deeper to satisfy the curiosity in the mind of Rich. I really appreciate it, Jeff. Great explanation.
Thanks, Jatinder.
So do we have any other? I see we still have quite a few people on. Anyone else have any other questions? Let's see.
Tim, I don't mean to say this thing or put you on spot, but I think you all like Jeff, you and Tim Rasmussen, you all kind of eat and breathe NEC. So I feel like that I could ask you guys. I think
Sure.
I'm not sure how many inquiries we get or how many permit requests we get for putting up a generator in a residential home or a duplex or a 4-unit or 6-unit building and things like that. Do you guys want to tell people, like, if that's the case, what would be the permit requirement, or if there is a tip, give them that reference? And I'm not even sure, how many times light goes out because of operational limitations of SCL. Not sure.
Sure.
But I was just wondering, that will be a good information for people to know.
I can surely touch on that. For anyone interested, as far as generators, there's a variety of different generator systems out there. There's a variety of there's the remote system that you roll your generator out of your garage and plug it into an outlet and backfeed your. There's a couple of different ones. There's one you can backfeed your. That there's a specific little part that mounts on your panel to turn off your main breaker and be able to backfeed your panel. There's also systems that are called generator transfer switch. That's a manual switch. As far as permitting, those are pretty basic over-the-counter permits. You would just buy a dedicated circuit on a permit for that. Usually it's a 30 amp circuit. And then there's the automatic transfer switch, and there is a little more in depth, a little more complicated to install. There's several things that we have to know as far as on an automatic transfer switch is that's going to work on whether anybody does anything to it or not. As soon as the power drops, the generator will kick off. It's usually a 100 amp circuit, and on those we actually require a service permit, because on the transfer switch you are in most cases you're changing your service over to where the transfer switch is your main breaker, so all of your grounding and everything would go to the transfer switch instead of your normal panel, your main house panel. So it's important to know, how big of a system you want. If you're putting in, and most of the people that install the generator transfer switches that are the automatic or ATS systems, most of those companies are aware of doing the permitting. And I said there's a homeowner. The homeowner a lot of times will do their own manual transfer switch, and there's a variety of different options there. I've personally installed all three types. So it's kind of a wide range. If you're just doing a manual switch, your permitting is solely over the counter, and you buy a dedicated circuit. The key thing to remember with any transfer switch, back-fed panels or otherwise, is no matter what, do not send power back to the power company. They get really upset and they will come look for you. So unfortunately, there's some people that will just put it in and plug a breaker in, and that is not the way to go. You have to do it per code. There's devices that are made out there that protect that, as I was talking about. When you turn the main breaker on and turn your generator on, there's a slide bar, a metal bar that automatically will keep one from turning on the other, or when one's on, the other one is off. And that is solely to protect the backfeed of the power company. So you want to make sure that you're code compliant. As far as specific questions, I will, if anybody has any specific questions on generators, I will do my best to answer those. Basic permitting for residential on the transfer switches are all, even the automatic transfer switch is an over-the-counter permit. The only difference is instead of buying a 30 or 50 amp dedicated circuit for a manual transfer switch, you would buy a service, because you're changing how your service runs and where your main service disconnect is in that automatic transfer switch. Jeff, you got any? Did I lose Jeff?
Nope, I'm here. I just wanted to add a couple things in regards to generators for our customers out there today. One of the things that's very popular right now are the solar panel made by Tesla. There's a few different companies where they come out, they install the solar panels on your roof, and they have a big battery array that's like in your garage. Tesla calls them power walls. But these systems are basically independent power systems. So when you lose your house power, your street power from Seattle City Light out there on the power pole, these systems power your house for X amount of time. The big advantage with the solar panels being installed, they can keep that power being generated, and you can actually run your house for quite some time without the advent of Seattle City Light power to your house. But when you do these projects, they get involved. They're technically complicated. So I haven't seen one done by a homeowner yet. They've all been done by a contractor, but they are very popular right now installs on single family homes.
Even in Seattle, where it's always cloudy, those work.
Even in Seattle, Mirabelle.
Well, believe it or not, it's kind of fun. I'm great you brought that up. It's great you brought that up. Believe it or not, Seattle gets plenty of sunshine for solar panel arrays. It does not have to be a blue sky day for solar panels to run at 60, 70% efficiency at all. It just has to have ambient daylight for those panels to work very efficiently.
So it's much complicated for me to get a tan. It's much easier for the solar panels to work.
Yes, much.
Well, and I will tell you, I'm originally from Florida. In fact, my background is taken from a lake that's in Florida, where they get a lot of sunlight, and they're doing. I was home a few months ago, and they're building these big solar fields to do the. But I've always been a little intrigued with the solar systems, and I was talking to one of the installers one day, and the guy, just like Jeff was saying, they actually perform almost at optimum power because they go off the UV. They don't necessarily go off of the heat from the sun. So they're constantly, even on a cloudy day, you're still getting, a fairly good amount of storage from your solar systems. And if we look at the amount of permits that we sell for solar systems, I don't have an exact number, but I know there's times that I will do 2 or 3 in a day. And I probably do at least 5 a week, roughly, on most times, of solar systems that are being installed here in the city of Seattle. Solar is a big it is a big thing, even in the cloud and rain and dreary Seattle winters, or whatever you want to call it, I guess.
Okay. I was born and raised here. I don't know any different.
Yeah,
it's not dreary.
But so yeah, solar is definitely, Marivelle, solar is definitely a big thing here in Seattle. There is a question from Ming. On the Ming, I'm going to try to answer your question. It says if a homeowner does his own electrical work, he has to live in the house for 2 years before selling or renting the house. Is this correct? I will have to refer that to and unfortunately Tim had to leave. I'm pretty sure that there is a requirement for that.
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure on the exact time frame. So
it is 2. Ming is correct. It is 2 years.
Oh, is it 2 years? Okay.
If you pull a homeowner's permit and you're doing work, you're supposed to live in that house for 2 years before you can sell it if you're gonna do all the work yourself. So that, Ming, you are correct.
I just want to make sure we don't miss any of the questions because I'm talking and I can't watch the chat as closely as I'd like. So anyone else have any other questions? Richard, do you have any more questions? Marivelle, Catherine?
I have a silly question.
There's no
Since
such thing as a silly question.
okay, well, I use a lot of the ICC codes, the IRC, the IBC. Do you see any time in the future or far future where the cities will adopt the electrical codes on the ICC books, or is it
No.
always going to be the NEC?
I believe it will always be the NEC. That's my opinion now. So unless Jatinder knows of something that I'm not aware of,
So,
we pretty much adopt the NEC and NFPA rules, which the NEC is done by NFPA. So I don't see any. I've not heard of anything that we would go with the ICC, any of the ICC rules.
yeah, I think just as a clarification, any portions of NEC which are incorporated into codes like IRC or some of the other codes, because the NEC is more like it is called NEC code, but it is basically is a sort of standard,
Correct.
and it is more concrete and more specific in its requirement. And I think anything that you see as a portion of IRC code, that is almost a replica of those areas which exist in NEC as a big code. So there is not any technical difference between the two. It's just a matter of how they want to make it available or write it. And unfortunately, those decisions are in the minds of people who really publish these codes, or maybe through some consensus process that happens at the national or international levels. I would say just like for energy right now, for energy conservation code, there is a big push that that should be written as a standard rather than a code. And I'm pretty, convinced, because right now those arguments are going on in the national stage one way or the other. But there's not any difference between the two, whether it is a part of IRC or it is a part of NEC. And necessarily, what they have done is they took a little portion of NEC and put it in the IRC, so that to make it more convenient for people to use it.
And Jatinder brought up a good point too. Also, is the NEC is a minimum standard. There is it's a minimum safety standard. So if you're doing something and you go over and above what that minimum standard is, you're not going to get dinged on an inspection because you did more than what the standard is. It is a minimum safety standard.
I hope we answered her question. Not sure if we did.
Marivelle, did that answer your question?
Oh, yes, yes. I'm not familiar with the NEC because I use a lot the IRC,
Okay.
maybe the IBC for tenant improvement, but
Sure.
so I'm not familiar. I just assumed the NEC was more detailed and been around longer. But since I've seen in the past years the ICC adopting certain plumbing code, mentioning more plumbing, electrical.
Right.
They wanted to go toward one universal code,
Yeah, well, and even just like the NEC is right now, the NEC comes out, and a lot of people may not understand this, and I'll try to explain how this works. Every 3 years, they have code panels that come together. Anybody can submit a request for change to the NEC, National Electrical Code, and I don't have the website to do that, but anybody can submit changes. And what happens is they go to these change boards, and there's several different groups of these change boards that take different sections of the code, and they call them code change panels, and they go through it all and they hash it back and forth and eventually come up with an approved national electrical code. Okay, and then so that gets adopted, And then the state of Washington says, okay, we want that got adopted, but we want these things put in to the state code. So then you have the state WAC rules that basically go in and say we follow the state or we follow the NEC except for these things. Okay, and they write their own codes. So if you were outside of Seattle, city of Seattle, you'd have to follow these certain WAC rules. Well, then the city of Seattle, we do the same thing, and we have a code panel that will go through our city of Seattle codes, and Jess was sharing. We go through and we go through and see, because there's certain things that we require that the NEC doesn't necessarily require, or the state does not necessarily require, but we have a little bit more stringent. So our codes get changed every 3 years for the city as well. I've had the opportunity of being on one of these code change panels last cycle. And we go through the whole thing and figure out, okay, what are we going to change? And we've tried to limit ours and stay as close to the NEC as possible, but we still have a few things out there that are a little bit different. And I can't answer specifically what those are, but there's, we have several, I don't know, probably 50 pages or so that are different from the NEC. So that's the process behind how the code works. And the let's see what Jeff's got up here. The submitting proposals, anyone can submit a proposal. If you see something, another key thing is, I don't know if any of you have lakefront property. A big change in the last couple of years has been ground fault requirements for docks and boathouses and linkage current in the water. If you live near on a lake or have a dock, I would highly recommend that you consult one of us or somebody else that has some background on the linkage current, because that is a huge problem. And there's been a lot of, and that's driven a lot of the changes in the last 2 code cycles, because of the deaths that have been happening around marinas and boat docks because of leakage current from the boats. So, if you live on a dock, have a boat at a marina, please go and research leakage current and ground fault requirements, and what to do. And basically what happens is people are swimming in the water, and that leakage current, basically they get electrocuted, and what they try to do is swim back to the dock, and the closer to the dock they get, the stronger it is. And then unfortunately it is usually does not end well. So tons of changes on that in the last 2 code cycles. So like I said, just as a warning, if you own a dock, have a dock, go to a dock, look and make sure they have GFI protection and the protections that are out there to protect you from, or don't go swimming around a marina because it's very dangerous.
Wow. Well, I would like to submit a proposal to NEC. They should have minimum 4 fourplex outlets in all bedrooms.
That's a good proposal. I all I can do is encourage you to submit it. I can't say that it would get approved. If it's like my house, I have we have a lot of things plugged in, and it would be a good thing. But I will tell you, Maribel, because if you're not because the code is minimum, if you chose to do that in your house, there would be no violation. You would be meeting. So if you're building a house and you want that done, feel free to go ahead. I know a lot of people that do that. Same thing in your kitchens. There's nothing that says you can't have fourplexes in your kitchens.
It's funny that you say that, Maribel, because when I'm out in the field inspecting houses, if I run across a homeowner or maybe an electrician, I always can tell these houses because they've got receptacles everywhere. They've gone way above and beyond what code requires. And a lot of the times it's common sense, but like Tim was saying, the NEC code is a minimum requirement. You always can do more.
Hey, Tim or Jeff, do you mind clarifying a little bit for the benefit of Marivell? I think there is a NEC code proposal, like at the national level, that deals with NFPA and NEC panels, which are out there who work through changes into the actual NEC code. And then there is a process here within the city that is done through CCAB, Construction Codes Advisory Board, which Mika Chappelle or Jennifer, they manage that program. And I think, if I remember it correctly, maybe Rich, Mel, Tim Rasmussen, or maybe 2 or 3 inspectors also participate in those discussions on 3 yearly basis to, enact any changes that they feel like there is a need based on the feedback or based on the safety aspects. But those are 2 distinct processes. And one is at national level and one is here at the city, or our interaction with the state, kind of comparing it with the WAC rules and things like that. So it'll be good to clarify those 2 things to her.
Okay, I'm not aware of the CPAC requirement or the code panel that I know there's a lot of things out there that we don't that there's a lot of things that happen that happen above or outside of our current department. I'm not 100% sure, Jatinder, on the CPAC. I know that there are tons of safety codes changes, and I'm just not sure what.
Okay. I think, Tim, I would request Jeff Goy to kind of put a CCAB link for people's benefit to kind of get engaged into the conversation. I think that would be a good start point for anybody who's interested more deeper into how we do code changes at City of Seattle level, or our interaction with the WAC rules at the state level, like with labor and industries.
Right.
I mean, we're paying more taxpayer money on more code committees.
Well, our code committees are done internally as part of our job. So we're not creating new, at least in our Seattle electrical inspections code updates. We're not creating new committees outside of. We do that as part of our job. So we're on these committees as inspectors, and that flows into our job. A lot of that is being done in between inspections, and and that's one reason it takes a while. So we're not spending extra tax dollars are creating new committees to do these code changes.
Yeah, I'm just playing, but yeah, it's just hard to keep up to date with so many.
That's a very good question, because I mean there are a lot of times where committees are created to, and I understand the point. So, but yeah, all of our Jeff's got the code changes to the code up on the screen. You can see. But yeah, all of our code panels, our code committees are done internally, and it's the process behind that's something else that I think is important to realize is we changed as inspectors, and I kind of laid out the process where the NEC changes their codes, and then the state does their portion of the code changes, and then it comes to the local municipality. Well, in that process, once we've gone through it, then we have to submit it, and that's one reason the state adopted the 2020 NEC, and their changes, I believe, effective was December. Well, ours won't be effective until March because everything we do has to go through city council and get approved. There's a process to submit it to city council, and then the city council has to approve any of the changes that we make. And basically all of our changes are run right in line with the NEC and the state, and but there is a process that we go through to do the code changes, and then it's all submitted through the city level, up the food chain, and then eventually it gets to city council, and then it's eventually approved or disapproved by city council. And then the latest thing is the codes have come out that our codes won't be in effect until March 15th. That's the latest date we've been given. So that's a little bit about how we get to have the Seattle code.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions more.
Okay.
So I guess I'll first start with what's the line between what a homeowner does, an example being switching out outlets, maybe putting in a new ceiling light fixture, and then I'm thinking, well, what if I need a larger box where an outlet has a couple lines more coming into it than comfortably would hold a GFI outlet? What's the line between what I can do without a permit and when I do need to get a permit? So if I put in a larger box, do I need a permit?
Okay. This is always a tough question.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. The state says if you do any modification, you need a permit. That's the basic guideline. If you do any modification, alteration, you're required by WAC rules, state electrical board, WAC rules, you're required to get a permit. Okay?
Okay.
So that's the basic one-line answer. If you are not replacing any wires, if you're not replacing, and I think even our Seattle code says the homeowner can replace up to 5 or 10 outlets without getting a permit at any one time. So there's some guidelines there.
The word you're looking for words are like for like.
Like for like, you can do all you want to do.
So putting in a bigger box, that would be like for like?
Nope, that would be replacing a service, because
I think he's referring to an electrical box, like from a single duplex to a double duplex.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, or a deeper one.
Right. You're in that point. In that case, you are modifying the circuit. That does take a permit.
Okay. Am I going to be prosecuted for any questions I ask?
No, but I did, in all fun, I did tell you we were recording this. So, but no, we want you to ask the questions.
Okay, thank you.
And the process to get a permit, Jeff, can you share your screen with the Seattle Services portal, please?
You bet.
getting a permit, most everything residential can be done, pretty much everything residential can be done as an over-the-counter permit, okay? Which is simply can be done right from your living room or your office. And so I'm going to let Jeff walk you guys through. Do you have the login, Jeff? Can you walk us through how to get how to pull an over-the-counter permit?
Well, right now I'm at the main electrical inspection page, and we can kind of walk them through that if you wanted to view your permit. So I've got some permit numbers saved here. So on my drop down, I've got a permit number already in my drop down that I'm just gonna enter in today. And this is how you can view your permit. You can do it either with a permit number or your address at your house. In this particular case, we have our permit number here at the top, 680-5997-EL. You also can find it by address. This particular address is on Lakeside Avenue South. Is there any questions out there on the SDCI website and basically viewing your permit? And then we'll go into pulling of permits.
Well, so far so good.
Okay.
So, and the other thing to keep in mind is all of this information is public information. So anybody can pull up the Seattle Services portal and put in an address. You know, I can pull up an address and look and see if somebody has a permit for something. Your neighbors, I've had cases where people would stop me when we were driving. They'd stop me on the street and say, "Oh, my neighbor's building this huge thing, and you know, do they have a permit?" And so I have to refer them back to. We have the capacity internally to look it up, but I also pass that information on that, you know, this is all public information. You can put any address you want in the city in these public records and pull it up and tell if someone has a permit. So if you're building something and your neighbors don't like it, and you did it without a permit, don't be surprised if you get a visit from a code compliance person, because they may have pulled your stuff up and see you don't have a permit, and that's a whole nother department that we have that deals with code compliance and those issues. So
yes, these records are public.
Yes, all these records are public.
Okay, so even if it's a super small project, like one box, I'll still pull the permit, right?
Correct.
The correct answer is yes. The correct answer is yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure I'll be able to figure it all out once I go through the process too. So let me ask a second question. I have not done any light fixtures, and it's a 2-story home. So some of the fixtures are under the 2nd story floor, and some will have maybe potentially attic crawl space. So my question is, based on past experience, what happens when I take the light fixture off and I see that this knob and tube, that the insulation is disintegrating? Are there any quick fixes for the last 2 or 3 inches of that insulation? I had somebody tell me that shrink wrap was the answer.
Oh, no.
Well, I can tell you and remember the beginning of this meeting. This was my expertise for many, many years. Not shrink wrap, but shrink tube is a way that you can do it. What causes that is in the old fixtures, Um, in these older houses, there's usually one light in the center of the room, and the people that have lived there have become older and their eyes are worse, as much like mine are. They get worse and worse. So, what do? We put a bigger bulb in.
Yeah.
And the reason your insulation's falling off, if you look at the size of the bulb, is those wires, they're usually a maximum of 60 watts. Well, as the time has progressed, people can't see. They put that 100-watt bulb in there, not realizing that they're baking their wiring underneath. So that is one way to make a repair, to be able to salvage it until it could be rewired. Sometimes it's so far back that you just can't do that. I have pulled wires down that the insulate or the sheetrock or lath and plaster has been completely baked to the point that it crumbles, and um, your wires are just bare all the way back into beyond the. And in those cases, you need to open that ceiling up and repair it properly.
Okay. And what did you call it? Shrink something?
It's called shrink tube,
Shrink
and
tube.
yeah, shrink tube. You can buy it. It's little tubes. Looks like a little straw, and you take a lighter or a hair dryer or whatever, and there's ways, and there's instructions obviously on how to do it, but you slide it on there and you buy the smallest you can get and you shrink it on, and it basically insulates the wire.
Okay.
Tubing, yeah, there you go, Jeff. I have used miles of it over my career.
Oh, thank you.
So that is one way. Your better way is to go ahead and rewire the thing and eliminate the knob and tube wiring, which would require a permit. The other thing you need to remember is on the knob and tube, when you take that fixture down, most cases there's not a box behind it.
Huh.
So you are required, once you take that fixture down, to put a box up there. And
yeah, the wire just comes through the wall with no metal box.
Absolutely. With knob and tube, it happens every day.
Wow.
Knob and tube, most light fixtures don't have a box behind them unless they've been fixed or repaired, in years past.
Wow.
So that being said, you're supposed to put a box, and they have what are basically called knob and tube pan boxes. They're a half-inch deep, and they have two holes and a clamp that you can put up there, and you cut the drywall back or whatever, and the box will fit flush then. Because your fixtures are supposed to be mounted to a box. They're not supposed to be mounted to the structure.
Yeah.
So that's very common in knob and tube, and there kind of takes us back to the codes at the time when the knob and tube was put in. That was legal. Okay, so unless you touch it, and by changing the fixture, then you've opened it up, so you have to bring it up to code. You have to put a box in. If you never touched it and it was just like that until the end of time, then it would be okay like that until the end of time, as long as you don't mess with it. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's real good to know. I mean, that doesn't sound so daunting. It's just, I'm surprised to think these wires are just be coming through the wall like that.
They just come through the wall. They have what they call a what's the name for it? Jeff, what's the sleeve, the cloth wrap that's on them? Just they have like a sheathing that the wire goes through, so the wire is protected from the plaster.
Oh, okay.
I forget what it's called now.
Yeah, it's the sheath.
Loom.
Loom. Thank you.
Yeah,
Loom.
loom. it came back to me. But they are protected with the loom. It's a cloth, like a cloth sleeve that the wire goes through, and the wire goes through and protects the wire, and you're supposed to use that same loom when you go into your box. So, and you can still find that rolls of that loom out there. It is a have to search for it. But as a residential rewire person, I always saved it when I pulled the old houses out, or when I would rewire the old houses, I would always save some of it. So if I ever had to do a repair, I would have it.
Boy, okay. Well, thank you
So
very much.
Catherine wrote a note that says, on this website, I see a complaint and a violation for my home before I bought it, but how do I tell if the violation was resolved or brought into compliance? Catherine, I'd have to look up your complaint to be able to see that. Feel free. I'm going to give everyone my email address. I'll put it out there. Catherine, this might be one that we can help on outside of this meeting. My address email is tim.bennett, just like my name, at seattle.gov. And Jeff's is jeff.goit at seattle.gov. So feel free, Catherine, if you'd like to email me with that, I'd be glad to try to help you look through that, and see if we can help figure out what it is too, because sometimes they have complaints or violations that turn out to be the grass was too high, so, and unless you can go through those, but anyway, my email, feel free. I am always open to answer questions. Feel free to email me electrical questions. If you got other questions, email them. I will do what I can to put you in the right direction. So anyway, so yeah, Catherine, if you'll send me an email, I'll get back to you next week. Anyone else? Richard, any more questions?
Hey, Tim, I think the last thing I was going to do and share with our customers today is I've got our district map up to the right here, as all of our supervisors, the inspectors, which districts they're in.
Move your gray box, please. There you go. I don't know where that box keeps coming from.
Well, it's my when I've got all these windows open, that's my WebEx box.
So on this map, and Jeff can show you, I actually am a district inspector for District 5, all of Capitol Hill, or the majority of Capitol Hill. Jeff is a district inspector for District 7, which is
all of the Rainier Valley.
Yeah, all of Rainier Valley. Up until, I'm not sure where we have people logged into the meeting from. Up until about right before COVID, I was the district inspector for District 4, which at that time was District 10. So they do move us around every once in a while, but it's this map is also available on the Seattle Services portal, I believe it is. There is a map out there that has, and this has all of our phone numbers, our office phones. All of us that are working from home are our phones are transferred directly to our cell phones, so we're in 100% communication. Like I said, feel free to ask any questions, email us. we're here to serve the public, and so we just want you guys to know that we are here to answer those questions for you. I think Tim Rasmussen put it up earlier on on the chat box, the phone number for if you have direct code questions that you can call in and speak to someone directly on the code questions. I believe one of our plan reviewers take care of that code question line. But if you don't get an answer through that, feel free to call Jeff or I or email us.
Or, if you can see the district map and you can see who your district inspector is, feel free to call them. I always encourage my customers, in particular the homeowners, hey, if you've got any questions, ask me. Give me a call. If you've got a permit pulled out and you want a consultation meeting, I'm more than happy to come out and look at things before, we go down the wrong road. Call me out. We'll talk about it. I'll help you out. I'm more than happy to do that.
And that's true with all of our inspectors. All of our inspectors are we're here to serve the public, and so and if you for whatever reason find that you can't get the right answer, Tim Rasmussen was on here earlier. He's one of the supervisors, and he will do whatever he can to answer your questions. We do ask that you try to deal with the district inspectors first, but if you can't get through, or you're not getting the help that you think you should need, feel free to go to that supervisor, and all of those supervisors are listed on this district map as well. So and there's, like I said, there's a lot of we're busy every day, but we always have time to answer emails and take phone calls. It might take us a day to get back to you, but I make it a point. I try to answer. If you email me today, at least by tomorrow, I try to answer it. So, but anyway, that's. Anybody else got any more questions? I see a couple of. I'm going to look through the chat here. I see somebody put a chat notice about Ming, on your 200 amp service to supply a house with an ADU. The first thing I would say is you need to have a load calculation done for your house and the ADU for a service load to make that determination. There's a lot of variables out there that would determine that. And just to say off the top of my head, without knowing square footage and all of the requirements with the hot water heaters, have your electrician do a load calculation, and they would be able to tell you if 200 amps is enough. Let's see, what other. Okay, and I talked to Catherine about the complaint and violation. Let's see what else. I think we've gotten all the questions. Anybody that hasn't gotten a question answered, feel free to email Jeff or myself, and we will. Feel free to email Jeff or myself, and we will. Mike, I see Mike put a comment that I believe the SEL map doesn't look to be supported by Internet Explorer, use Chrome or Firefox. That's probably very true. Most of the city stuff has gone to using Chrome. So, and I'm not a computer guy, so I can't.
That is correct. We have found far more success using Chrome versus Internet Explorer. Almost all of us have switched to Chrome as our browser.
Okay. So, Jeff, you want to pull up real quick? We've got about 5 more minutes. Can you pull up the map and show them? Do you have your Acela open? I can do it.
Indirect, yeah. I was going to say indirectly.
Indirectly.
Well, I mean, what do you want to look at in
Well,
Acela?
I was just gonna show them like the map for Monday. How our jobs.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know what the areas that we cover are. What our the Monday's map looks like. I mean, just a fun thing to see, so you can see what districts are busier than others, and that changes every day. So, can you pull that up?
It's going to take me a sec.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'll just move it over.
Okay.
Okay, so screen 1, and then I'm going to just. Okay, so can you see the map? Do you see
Nope.
it?
Nope.
I don't see it yet.
You don't see it yet? Okay, maybe
Nope.
I can't do it that way. Keep trying, Jeff. Sure that I did it right.
Hold on.
I don't have it in my. I've got it loaded up on my other screen. Anyway, the way our work is assigned, when you call in an inspection, it populates the map with a little square, or we call them houses, basically job addresses that we do our route with. And so every morning we go through this process of these are the jobs that we have, and sometimes we have to split them up and share jobs with districts. Just because I'm in District 5 doesn't always mean I will be in District 5. I may have to go help District 1 or District 7. So there we go. That's what I was looking for. So as you can see, all of our jobs are as the permits get called in, they populate this map. And over on the right hand side, you see different inspectors' names, and then you see generic inspectors. Basically, what the generic inspectors is, each district is assigned 2 inspectors, and so everything goes into generic, and then we switch them out from there in the mornings. So our first hour and a half or so of the day is pretty busy getting sometimes upwards of 200 inspections assigned or reassigned. So we have to, as I had a person tell me the other day, well, it's just a couple of clicks on the computer. Well, it's a little bit more involved than that. So we do find ourselves very busy, especially first thing in the morning. And then we're taking phone calls and scheduling our routes and things of that nature. But as you can see, each one of these pop up as a different color. And this is kind of the inside view of the inspectors of what we see and what we're dealing with on a daily basis, So
and more importantly, for the people that are still on, they'll have a little bit better understanding when we tell you, hey, we only can be there from noon to 2. We do these just like a paper route to be as efficient as possible, to get as many inspections done a day as we can. So when we talk to you and we tell you, hey, I'm going to be there between 10 and noon, this is kind of the how and the why, because we have so many inspections to do on a daily basis. So we can provide that 98% same day inspection rate that we have. This is how that gets done.
Yeah. And Jeff, if you would click on Friday's inspections, there's 2 left over Friday. So just so that so out of roughly about the same inspections that we had, we completed all those inspections except 2 on Friday. So we have a really good success rate with getting inspections done. And our goal is to have next day inspection. So if you call in by 7 a.m. today, or before 7 a.m., that's our cutoff. If you call it in, your inspection in before 7 a.m., we usually will be out there that day of the inspection. So if it's after 7, we'll be there the next day. So it's almost time. I see we still have a couple people still with us. Thanks, Jeff, for sharing. Again, my name is Tim Bennett. Jeff Goit is my partner and co-host here. I thank you all for the questions. And Maribel finally got her camera to work. So
No,
anyway,
I wanted my camera off, but I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It was very informative.
You're very welcome. And maybe the next one of these we do will be in person. I've done several of them in person, in the South End as well as up north. And they usually have them a couple times a year. So, but we thank all of you for participating in our question and answer session. You guys got a little more because we had some of our supervisors were on and able to throw some more expertise out there. And so again, we thank you, and feel free to email us, look us up on the phone register, and call us if you have questions. Not a problem.
Boy. Well, and it's Richard again. So thank you, Tim and Jeff, so much. This was wonderful. I live out of the area, so if you did it live, when we can do things in person again, I wonder if there's an option that it can also be streamed, so we can
it's funny, Richard, that you say that, because we were just having a conversation. We did a couple of trial runs with our lead. Jatinder is our higher up director, and then Tim is a supervisor, and then we have Rich, who's in between those two. He's our director for he's the chief electrical inspector. And Jeff and I and Tim had a meeting yesterday because we were having some technical difficulties, and he made mention that, when we do this in the future and we're back in, that there would probably still be some type of, very much like the virtual inspections, there's going to be some type of video, similar to this. I think it will, I can't say exactly how it's going to work, but I believe that in the future it will have an aspect of the virtual WebEx type meeting as well. I think that is definitely something that we would look into and reach out to be able to kind of coexist that. Usually when we do an in-person, it's in a big meeting room and people come and go all day long. We're usually there all day instead of 2-hour blocks. But the dynamics, the COVID world has changed the whole dynamic of inspections. It's changed the dynamic of our online meetings, our workspaces. It's changed a lot of dynamic for a lot of stuff. And so, I would hope that there would be some type of virtual portion of it at least, or for people like you that live outside of the area.
Okay. Well, boy, I sure hope so. And I'm
not sure. but keep in touch, and if we, if we find out, if we can send you an email or an invite or however it works, and let you know what's what.
Okay. Well, thank you both
Okay.
so much. You make it easy to do the right thing. So I appreciate it.
Well, and that's all we asked is we do our best to serve you. And as I said before, I took this job to be. I work for the people, and I'm here to help you guys to make you succeed. So, and Jeff, I know Jeff feels the same way. Customer service, I've me personally, I've had my own business. I've done all aspects of this, and never would have thought I'd be an inspector, but I crossed over about 5 years ago, and now I don't think I would do anything different. I enjoy it so much, and I get to work with people and I get to do a lot of teaching with the younger people on the sites, and a lot of times homeowners that are trying to do their own stuff and are just not 100% sure. So I get to do a lot of that teaching, and I'm not a teacher, but I will take the time and spend it. To me, it's about customer service. So, like I said, that's why I say feel free to email me if you have any questions or whatever. Me or Jeff, either one.
I hope you do more virtual presentations because I look a lot better in camera than in real life.
Yeah, I debated whether to even turn my camera on today. So, but I had to go find my background from Florida with the fishing out on the lake. So, I mean, that's like I said, the virtual world has completely changed. I personally had to spend some time in Florida this summer, and it allowed me an opportunity to be able to keep working and still take care of the personal things that I needed to take care of. So virtual is maybe part of the wave of the future. I don't know. We'll see. But I again thank you all. I'm gonna close out the meeting. Is there any last minute questions? Some of the other, I see a couple people still on. If anybody's got any last minute questions, feel free to unmute your mic and throw them out there real quick. And then if not, I'm gonna end the meeting, and we'll see you on your inspections.
Okay, goodbye.
All
Have a
right,
good rest
thank
of the
you.
day.
Thank you for spending the time with us.
Okay.
Thanks, Richard. Ming, thank you.
Well, I love the presentation. That's my feedback. So look forward to the next one. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, Richard.
Have a good weekend.
All right, take care.
All right, Tim, we got a couple people still kind of on logging off.
Yeah, that's okay. I just stopping the recording.
Okay, I was going to say, do you need me to post the procedure as far as saving it and all that?